In 2021, researchers at Stanford University ran a clinical trial that surprised even the scientists running it. They divided 36 healthy adults into two groups. One group ate a high fiber diet for 10 weeks, the kind of diet nutritionists have been recommending for decades. The other group ate a diet rich in fermented foods. The scientists expected the high fiber group to win. Fiber is one of the most studied and widely endorsed dietary interventions for gut health. The evidence is enormous. The consensus is strong. What they found instead stopped them. The fermented food group showed a significant increase in gut microbiome diversity. The high fiber group showed essentially no change. But the second finding was the one that changed the conversation. The fermented food group saw a reduction in 19 inflammatory proteins measured in their blood, including IL-6, the same cytokine we discussed in episode 12 that drives muscle breakdown. The high fiber group showed none of these reductions. Every single participant in the fermented food group showed the effect, not most. Every one. If you are over 60 and you have been ignoring fermented foods, or if you have been buying them based on marketing claims without knowing which ones the science actually supports, this video is going to give you the specific picture. Because the fermented food market is full of products with very different levels of evidence behind them. And for seniors specifically, the differences matter. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly what the gut-brain axis is and why it matters after 60, which fermented foods have the strongest clinical evidence, which ones are largely unproven despite their popularity, and how to add the right ones to your routine simply and affordably. The gut-brain axis is a term that has only entered mainstream medicine in the last decade or so. Most doctors who trained more than 10 years ago were not taught it in medical school, which is part of why most seniors have never had it explained. Here is what it means in plain language. Your gut and your brain are in constant, direct communication, not in a vague, metaphorical way. Through a physical nerve called the vagus nerve, which runs from your brainstem all the way down through your chest and into your abdomen. The vagus nerve carries signals in both directions. But here's the part most people do not know. Approximately 90% of the signals traveling through the vagus nerve go from the gut up to the brain, not the other way around. Your gut is not just receiving information from your brain. It is sending far more information back. And the gut produces approximately 90 to 95% of the body's total serotonin. Serotonin is the neurotransmitter most associated with mood, well-being, sleep quality, and appetite regulation. Now, there is an important nuance here worth being clear about. Gut-produced serotonin does not cross into the brain directly. Its role is primarily in regulating digestion and gut function, and it communicates with the brain through the vagus nerve and other signaling pathways. But the health of the gut microbiome, the trillions of bacteria living in your digestive tract, does influence this entire system. And that microbiome is something fermented foods can directly support. Here is what this means in practice. The gut microbiome is not static. It responds to what you eat, quickly, within days to weeks. And for adults over 60 whose microbiome diversity is already declining, the foods I am about to show you are among the most accessible and best supported interventions available. Let me show you exactly which ones are worth your money and which ones are mostly marketing. As we covered in episode 11, gut microbiome diversity declines with age. The community of beneficial bacteria that supports immune function, reduces inflammation, and regulates the gut-brain communication network becomes less diverse and less robust over time. The Stanford trial found that fermented food consumption increased microbiome diversity with stronger effects from larger servings and reduced 19 inflammatory proteins across all participants. For seniors whose microbiome is already less diverse and whose baseline inflammation is already higher, the potential benefit of adding these foods is meaningful. Before I walk you through the specific foods this is for educational purposes only, if you are immunocompromised, have a serious gastrointestinal condition, or take immunosuppressant medication, please speak with your doctor before adding fermented foods. Live cultures in fermented foods are safe for most healthy adults, but individual circumstances always matter. Now, here is the honest picture of which fermented foods actually have clinical evidence behind them and which do not. I am going to be more direct about this than most health content because this channel's standard is verified evidence, not trend. The fermented food with the most consistent clinical evidence for gut health benefits in adults is plain yogurt, specifically yogurt that contains live cultures, not the sweetened, flavored varieties that line most supermarket shelves. Those are desserts with marketing. Plain yogurt with live lactobacillus and bifidobacterium cultures, the label will say contains live active cultures, has been shown in multiple studies to improve gut microbiome composition, reduce certain inflammatory markers, and support immune function. For seniors over 60, yogurt also provides a meaningful amount of protein, calcium, and vitamin D in a single serving. It is one of the most nutritionally dense fermented foods available. Greek yogurt specifically delivers roughly 17 grams of protein per cup, as we discussed in the protein and sarcopenia episode. It functions as an anti-inflammatory food, a muscle-supporting food, and a gut-supporting food simultaneously. Kefir has the strongest randomized controlled trial evidence of any fermented food in human gastrointestinal health. It is a fermented milk drink, thinner than yogurt, with a slightly tangy, slightly effervescent quality. It contains a broader and more diverse range of live cultures than yogurt. At least one randomized controlled trial has found kefir beneficial for both lactose malabsorption and other gastrointestinal outcomes. A separate randomized controlled trial found that kefir supplementation produced significant increases in anti-inflammatory markers in elderly patients. Kefir is widely available in supermarkets. If the flavor is unfamiliar at first, it blends well into smoothies with fruit, which softens the tang. A small glass each day or every other day is a practical starting point. Sauerkraut and kimchi are fermented vegetables with a different and more mixed evidence picture. Both have been associated with beneficial alterations in gut microbiota in observational and laboratory research. One pilot study found that lacto-fermented sauerkraut improved symptoms in IBS patients regardless of whether the product was pasteurized. Here is the important caveat for seniors on blood pressure medication. Sauerkraut, kimchi, and similar fermented vegetables can be very high in sodium. Some varieties contain upwards of 500 milligrams per half cup serving. If you are taking medications for blood pressure, particularly the ACE inhibitors and ARBs we covered in episode 2, check the sodium content on the label and factor it into your daily total. Lower sodium versions exist. Homemade sauerkraut can be made with far less salt. The benefit is real, but so is the sodium consideration for this specific audience. Now, the part that most fermented food content leaves out. Kombucha, miso, and tempeh are frequently described as having major probiotic health benefits. But as of the most recent systematic reviews, there are no published randomized controlled trials specifically investigating kombucha, miso, or tempeh for gastrointestinal health in humans. That does not mean they are harmful. Miso and tempeh are nutritious, protein rich, genuinely healthy foods. Kombucha is a very low sugar option compared to most drinks. But the specific probiotic health claims made on many of their labels go beyond what the current human clinical evidence supports. For the gut health benefits that have been clinically demonstrated, yogurt and kefir are your most evidence supported starting points. Here is exactly what to do with this information. Start with one of the two most evidence backed options: a serving of plain yogurt with live cultures, or a small glass of kefir. Every day if possible, every other day as a minimum. If you enjoy the taste of sauerkraut or kimchi, add a small amount as a condiment alongside meals, but check the sodium and rinse it if you are managing blood pressure. Do not replace yogurt and kefir with expensive probiotic supplements unless your doctor has specifically recommended one for your situation. The whole food versions contain the bacteria within a food matrix that research suggests supports better survival through the digestive system. Here is the one sentence that matters most from this video. A Stanford clinical trial found that a diet rich in fermented foods increased gut microbiome diversity and reduced 19 inflammatory proteins in every participant. And for adults over 60 whose gut diversity is already declining and whose inflammation is already elevated, plain yogurt and kefir with live cultures are the most evidence supported and most accessible places to start. Your gut is not simply a digestive organ. It is part of a communication network that reaches your brain, your immune system, and your inflammatory pathways. And what you put into it responds more quickly than most people expect. That is what this channel is here for every week. Not trends, not supplements, not hype, just the specific, verified information your body can actually use. If this helped you today, subscribe. Every week, I bring you one thing that makes your good health decisions even better. Before you go, 13 videos, 13 things most seniors never heard. Next week, I'm covering a topic I have been building toward for the last several episodes. All the foods we have discussed, the leafy greens, the beans, the fatty fish. The fermented foods work better when one other thing is in place. Not a supplement, not a medication, not a protocol, a pattern. The overall eating pattern that ties every individual food we have covered into a single, coherent, evidence-based approach that the research on aging consistently supports. It has a name, and most people have heard of it. But most people have no idea why it works or why it works differently after 60 than it did before. That is next week. Don't miss it.